Aloha and good afternoon from Honolulu, Hawaii. My name is Jürgen Steinmetz, joining you from eTurbo News and Livestream.travel. It's a beautiful day out here. So when I look outside, I don't see a cloud out there, and it's beach time. But how safe is it to go to the beach here in Hawaii? We have a record increase in COVID, and everyone is scared about the holiday weekend we're experiencing at this time. We had 11 deaths, what is very high for Hawaii, but it's beautiful. It's really inviting. I see the sailing boats. I see people on the beach from here, and it's a busy summer day. How are things in Texas, Peter?
Well, things here are good. Of course, we don't have sailboats in the middle of Texas, but it's been a very warm summer day. Of course, we're on a holiday weekend. I'm going to be traveling to Washington, D.C. tomorrow. And on the East Coast, it's not only Labor Day, which is a big holiday in the United States, but it's also the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah. So much of the East Coast as a 2 or 3 day holiday. So it's really a 5-day weekend. So there's a lot of people traveling. It's a very, very busy time of the year. The public schools are closed because of both Rosh Hashanah and because of Labor Day. So this is a really busy time, especially on the East Coast and in California. But I think this is also a good time because it's a time of reflection. And one of the things that we'll be starting up again is our Heroes Award. And the importance of this is something that I like to say on some level, it's very equivalent, almost equivalent to getting a Nobel Prize. One, not everybody is entitled to get a Heroes Award, but secondly, and you have to be nominated, and we have a committee to go through it, but you don't have to be a bigwig. The nice thing about the Heroes Award is it really honors those people who maybe are not making six-figure numbers, or they're not making millions of dollars, but they're working every day, one way or the other, to make the tourism industry a better place. And in these very difficult days, I think that type of recognition is really important. So I think we should be very proud of our Heroes Award. The people who have received it have been really wonderful people, and a few more will be coming up. And I know you might want to say a few words about that.
Yeah, we have a number of people coming up from various parts of the world. We're invited to enter what we call the International Hall of Tourism Heroes. And anyone who's part of this hall eventually has a chance to become the hero of the year or the hero at a special occasion. So there are 2 levels now to the Hero Award. You can call it a superhero. But as Peter, as you said rightfully, our award is for everyone. We don't discriminate between a minister and a tour guide. Everyone who's done something special or out of the norm for travel and tourism should get a recognition as a tourism hero, especially when going through what some say impossible times of what we're going through right now. So we should point this out. We should recognize the bellman who found a suitcase at the airport for someone who left it behind. These are all people. They're essential for our business. We need to recognize a maid who takes care of a guest who is sick on COVID. I mean, there are real heroes out there, and many times we don't know who they are. And of course, we cannot recognize everyone. But
I think that's the important thing, is to give people recognition to our unsung heroes. And there are many of them. You are absolutely right. We can't recognize everybody, but we can try to recognize at least a few people from different areas. That's why we invite people to nominate, to let us know why that person is special, and to honor those people who I don't think these are just difficult times. I think these are the most difficult times the tourism industry has ever faced since the 1950s, when modern tourism began. And yet there are people who go out of their way to truly make the world a better place. And they are heroes.
And it's easy to nominate. So if you know anyone who you think should should become a hero, just go to heroes.travel. That's our website. You can actually see who our heroes are right now, heroes.travel, and click on submit. There's never a charge for this. We don't charge anyone who actually becomes a hero to be part of it. There are no marketing awards or any of these things. I know many of our competitors are making money on. We feel it's something we should give back to the industry, and that's what we're doing. So it's free, and it takes what it takes is a nomination by you, by at least one other person than the hero person himself. A hero who wants to become a hero and thinks he should be a hero can nominate himself or herself, but it takes one endorsement to at least consider it from our end. Well, and you can stay updated here on this channel on eTurbo News. We will interview every hero like we've done it in the past, so you will get to know them on this platform.
And as Andy Warhol said, we all deserve at least 15 minutes of fame in our life. So, the big wigs, the people who are in the news all the time, okay, they get more than their share of fame. But it's the little guy who so often gets forgotten. And we never mention him. No one ever mentions him. He's just the guy, the schlepper who does the stuff. And that's the way it is. So we need to really, in an industry that's all about people, be people oriented. So that's a really, good thing. This is, again, a holiday weekend in the United States. And one of the things we're starting to see around the world is countries starting to open up a little bit. I know that I think you mentioned Nepal is starting to open up. Israel is announcing that it's starting to begin to open up the door, and there's literally millions of tour groups that are trying to get into Israel. Of course, this is such a busy time there before Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So all the major holidays are right now. And I believe other places in Europe are beginning to open up. People are getting into France and England, Germany, though Germany is still recovering from some of the floods. I saw a speech today by Mrs. Merkel saying that I believe 181 people died in the German flooding, which is really amazing. And that it's going to take years for Germany to totally recover. But having said that, they are, and they're pulling themselves back. And those are good things. Where else in the world are people beginning to see a little bit of flowers coming through the cracks in the cement?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And when it comes to Germany, unfortunately, it's not opening up to everyone. It's not opening up actually to Americans yet, what is our largest audience. It did open up and it's about to close again. So really, we're going through uncertain times. And going back to Germany, what is interesting is because these discussions are made in Brussels at the European Union, and then individual countries can actually override it for their own territory. And there's Portugal. Portugal is overriding it. They don't care anymore what Brussels say. They know we need tourists, and they're open up. So every country is on its own, basically. And all the rules we had are disappearing.
If you have not been to Portugal, and visit them while they're open, because it's really a beautiful country. And I'm very partial to Portugal, partly because I speak the language. But visit Portugal. It's really gorgeous, lots of history, and hopefully they'll stay open for quite a while. But again, one never knows. That's one of the difficulties travel agents are having, is that they sell tickets and then you don't know the next week if the country's open or not. And people are having a very hard time trying to make plans. So one of the things we need to come is to figure out exactly who's doing what. And that leads to the whole issue of national travel warnings. And the United States has put on all sorts of travel warnings for countries, given them a 4, which is our highest level of warning, to places that you really wonder, is this really is this thought through very carefully, or do they just decide, okay, we're going to give everybody a 4? But that's a real problem, these travel warnings, because they're not always very accurate.
And yeah, it's really a problem if you look at the example for Bahamas. Bahamas Right now, the United States considered it in the level of travel warnings a category 4 country. That means do not travel. That is equal to what in normal times we put against a country like North Korea or Iran.
Or Afghanistan.
Afghanistan, yes, and there's nothing higher than 4. So I really think in view of the COVID situation, these travel warnings should be discussed. There's not one solution for everyone. So maybe we have to have 2 different warnings. One is about COVID and the other one is about other issues. And it is simply not fair. Bahamas is almost like a state, like 50, 100 miles off the coast of Florida, and it's completely dependent on the US travel and tourism market. It's simply not fair. People travel to Florida, where actually the COVID numbers are almost 4 times as high as the Bahamas, and no one stops you to go to Florida. So it's...
You can't stop an American from traveling in his own country.
Yes, and exactly. So these type of comparison, I think, needs to be put up also on an international level. When it comes here to Hawaii, our tourism is booming, even though our numbers are by far higher than they are in the Bahamas or in Jamaica or in any of the countries we're putting severe travel warnings on.
Yeah, of course. One of the reasons there's travel warnings is that you're forcing an increase in the domestic market. And so one of the things I think you always have to worry about is, are those travel warnings there as warnings, or are they there as a sort of subtle marketing, in the sense that I'm afraid to go to the Bahamas, I'm afraid to go to Jamaica, I'm afraid, so therefore I will go to Hawaii, and because they can't stop me from going to Hawaii or going to Florida. So I don't know if that's for sure, but I would agree that we probably need to have a health travel warning and a crime and terrorism. We probably need 3, or we could call it a violence travel warning and a health travel warning. They're 2 very different realities. And in all these places, often travel warnings are given to an entire country when it's really only sections of a country that are suffering. So that's, and many countries, by the way, not only, I don't think we should just say the United States. England has some, the United Kingdom has some strange travel warnings. The European Union has some strange travel warnings. Many countries are producing travel warnings, and they're also often very inaccurate. So that makes it harder, again, to have credible tourism.
Yeah, and Peter, this is really the entire discussion when it comes to the travel and tourism industry about lost or non-existing leadership. For instance, the World Tourism Organization, what is a UN agency, completely failed to take leadership of this situation. And there is really no multinational approach anymore. We have Visit USA come out with statement. We have ETUA, the European Travel Association, and others come out with statements. But it looks like they're really not talking to each other. You know, we need global platforms where things are discussed. We did an article just very recently. There was an attempt actually by the World Tourism Organization to bring various industry associations together. But what did they do? They meet once every 3 months. We don't even know how the situation is tomorrow. Meeting once every 3 months, they may as well not even want to meet. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I really think it's unfortunate that the United Nations is not taking a stronger and more productive part in really what was, or maybe still is, the world's largest industry. And millions of people are dependent upon it. And yet it's very hard to get standardized information to be able to compare one place to another. And one of the things that I used to recommend all the time when I worked with the UNWTO is create standardizations in crime, so that one country's measurements are the same as another, and people can really begin to have an idea what is safe, what is not safe. Now we need to do the same thing in health and create some sort of standardized problem. What do we mean by COVID? Is it if you're just diagnosed as positive, but you don't have to go to the hospital, or you know, that's one thing? Or are we going to call COVID cases only those that are serious and putting people on ventilators, or what? And nobody knows. So So we say, there's 1,000 cases of COVID, but no one defines what those cases are. And so that becomes really very difficult for the visitor who's not on that locale to know really how safe or not safe it is. My guess is if you walk down the street in Hawaii, you probably don't feel unsafe. But on the other hand, the numbers may tell a different story.
And Peter, I think unfortunately, it's time to have a discussion. How can we function and continue with COVID? I know we've been talking about the vaccine. There are more elements to the vaccine. It is true, we cannot shut down our economies indefinitely because there's simply no way. We now already have, I don't know how it is in Texas, but when you go here to Costco or wherever you go, in places you have a lot of empty shelves. Things are missing. They're not getting here. Vegetables are not getting here. So these are concerns, they're not even touched the surface yet. Medication, I just had a notice from my pharmacy, my medication, they haven't produced it yet. So they're sending me to a doctor to get an alternative. So there are issues that are coming out of this non-productive
Of course, part of that is
situation.
Not only COVID, the other part of that is that many countries, including the United States, are paying people not to work. So you have this strange combination of lots of unemployment with lots of people who don't want to work. And this was, I think certainly in the United States was a major error in the Biden administration, but in lots of other places, you can earn a couple can earn up to $80,000 a year in many states by not working. And that's really problematic because why would you go to work if the husband and wife are each earning $40,000 by staying home? And you don't have to pay for childcare, you don't have to pay for taxes. You have life is easy, and you can go to the beach every day. So then we have a problem of supplies not coming. Now, of course, Hawaii has this particular problem, and that is that you don't really produce many of your own products, and you can't drive a truck to Hawaii. You have to fly everything in or everything by boat. In a place like Texas, where it's self-sustaining and where you have it's a land situation, life is a lot easier. But still, even here, we're starting to see problems. Restaurants are closing around the world because of lack of employees. And that is a really major problem. And the US government just seems to be totally ignoring those realities.
Yeah, and it's not only the US government, you have the same issues in Europe and in other parts of the world. And then you have parts of the world like in Africa, where there are a lot of people willing, and in India, where a lot of people out there willing to work and they cannot find work. So it is.
Yeah, so you have work where there's people who don't want to work, and you have people who want to work where there's no work.
Yeah, it is. It's a very, very strange situation. And this needs to be coordinated because we don't want to run out of, one of the problems we have here, and since I live in Hawaii, I'm more familiar with what's going on here, but we don't have enough oxygen. There's oxygen out there, it's right in the air, but we don't have enough tanks. So the steel industry is not producing enough containers to get oxygen tanks to Hawaii and most likely to other places. And they're needed right now because our hospitals are filled with COVID patients and they rely on oxygen to survive.
Yeah, Hawaii, again, of course, is not that anybody should suffer in Hawaii, but it's a special situation. In a place like Texas, if there's oxygen across the border in Oklahoma, you can just drive a truck. You cannot drive a truck instantaneously to Hawaii. It's isolated, and so that makes the situation even worse. But of course, the problem is not just COVID. The problem is we're seeing a double problem. One is that there's especially small stores, mom and pop stores are going out of business on a regular basis because they cannot afford to function without labor. I have a good friend here who runs a copy office, and he used to be open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. He's now open only Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. I asked him why. He said, because I can't get anybody to work. And so so stuff isn't getting done. And that's a real problem. The other side of that is, as governments produce money and don't have people work, we're seeing inflation. As you know, last month in the United States, we had the worst inflation since Jimmy Carter. And that's going to impact tourism. If you look at airline prices, they're going up. If you're looking at food prices, they're going up. Restaurant prices, every time I go to a restaurant, they've gone up. It's only $1 or $2, but if you're a family of four and it's $2 per meal times 4 or 5 people, it's now $8 for $10. And where you were paying, and plus the tip, where you were paying maybe $10 for a meal, you're paying $14 for a meal now. Well, multiply that times 4 becomes a big problem. So the economic policies right now are really dangerous. And this is the type of stuff that could cause a depression eventually. And then the last thing we need is a 1929 depression. And that's very scary.
And it is, Peter, and when you look at our industry or any industry right now, I think no one faced the reality of COVID. No. So what can we do to continue living with COVID as safe as possible, right, realizing we cannot really get rid of it right now?
It's not going away. And you could not be right. You know, most people don't realize the Spanish flu, which was the worst pandemic in the history of the world, is still with us. Now, the way we dealt with it is we now call it hepatitis C. But it's the same flu, they just changed the name. COVID will be with us forever. We might as well get used to that. Now, the question is, how do we learn to live with COVID in a way that the world doesn't come to a complete halt? Or we better be prepared to eventually have some form of depression. And people will be depressed. Suicide rates are going through the roof. I mean, not only are we talking economic depression, we're talking psychological depression. And that's a really major problem. We're seeing children are doing terribly in school. Education levels are going down. And all this is, you know, it's like a domino effect. One domino is knocking down the next domino. So we have to really start saying, you know what? It's here. We're going to learn to live with it. Let's come up with new patterns and restructure society so that not only the tourism industry, which I consider an essential industry, but food industries, we don't have truck drivers. You don't have school buses. Schools are now having to come up with new shifts because they don't have enough bus drivers to transport children back and forth to school. That's a major problem. And if you're a parent with kids in school, you can't go and pick up the kids at school. And then you can't afford to go on vacation because now you have to pay somebody to pick up your kids at school.
Yeah, I think we need to change the discussions in regards to COVID. It's something we thought is going to go away. I know when this problem came out in March, when I first was confronted with it, it came out a little bit before, but in March of 2020, I mean, everyone thought, okay, this is going to be a week or two and we're going to be back to normal. We're not going to be back to normal. I remember when they're selling T-shirts in Berlin with the F word and it says F you, COVID, you know, like it's going to be gone in 2 weeks. Unfortunately, this didn't happen.
No, it is very unfortunate. And so I think your position, it's now time for the tourism industry to get beyond the hope that it will go away and say, it's here to stay, it's with us, and how are we going to work with it rather than run away from it, because we won't be able to run away from it. And that's a big issue. And think how much of our time is spent on things like that. I'm glad we talked a little bit tonight about the Heroes Award, because these are people in extraordinarily difficult times who are finding ways to become heroes. And we should all be very proud of them. This is also, we'll be going to come up with a whole series of new special programs. And this might be a great time for you to tell us a little bit about how people could become sponsors of those upcoming events.
Yeah, we have 3 really interesting events coming up for World Tourism Day, and there may be another one following. One is about climate change with Professor Lipman and Vijay, an aviation expert from Singapore. and many guests. Then we're going to have our World Tourism Day for our heroes. So you will meet a lot of our heroes and you will hear from them. And we will talk about what World Tourism Day is and what it means for us. And then after this, we will invite you to look for a discussion with accessible tourism. These are people that travel with a handicap. And this is done by our friend Pankaj from Four Seasons Travel in Nepal, who has been an expert with this. He's worked with, I think, the George Washington University, actually, in Washington, D.C. about this. And so it's going to be an interesting discussion. And of course, to make this all possible, there is the opportunity that you could actually have your own presentation. Of course, it should fit within this presentation, but to promote your company. And that means you could become a sponsor to do this. It's not very expensive, but it's very effective. So if you're interested in becoming a sponsor, just go to worldtourismevents.com, register for any of the events you're interested in, and the system will ask you if you're interested in becoming a sponsor. We have two levels, one for $50 and one for $300. So it's not going to break the bank, but it's going to be, I think, a good opportunity. And on the other hand, it will help our team and us to maintain these events, because we're not charging anyone to be part of it.
And I'm glad you used the word team. Think about how inexpensive this this sponsorship is. What is it? $1 million a minute to sponsor a Super Bowl team. And we are definitely the Super Bowl of tourism. So you might not be able to afford to sponsor a team at the Super Bowl of football, but you can certainly afford to sponsor a team at the Super Bowl of tourism. And you know what? We do a lot more traveling and we touch a lot more people. So this is really your, dear listeners, opportunity to become involved and, in a sense, to really show the world you care, and they're allowing us to continue to create types of creative broadcasting that will bring us all together in a world which needs togetherness.
Yeah, and for those that are not believing in a sponsorship of a Zoom event, just look at this way. We're going to write about these three, specifically about these three upcoming events, and we include your link. And with our syndication, last month we reached 2.03 million people. So it goes way beyond this industry, goes way beyond more than what you can see people listening to the event, and it's there forever. So you can find it in 5 years. So anyways, that's enough advertising for ourselves, but we would appreciate anyone considering it and working with us.
Don't consider it advertising, it's a public service announcement.
And exactly, Peter. But I think that brings us to the end of today's discussion. We're going to have a lot more coming up.
Yes. And of course, from my perspective, this is our last broadcast of the year 5781, because Monday night starts the new year 5782 in the Jewish world. And lots of my Christian friends are also celebrating it in the sense that it's a biblical holiday. And I want to wish everybody a very happy, healthy 5782. Let's hope that for a change, it's a healthy one and a peaceful one, because we all need, if you're Jewish or not, I think everybody's ready for New Year after what's been going on in the world. So I want to wish you Shana Tova u'Mituka, a happy and sweet New Year.
No, thank you, Peter. I wish you that. Maybe you can explain for those that are not Jewish, like myself, how come you guys are like so much ahead of everyone else, like 3,000 years ahead of the rest of them?
Yeah. Well, we've been here around a long time. Of course, I should say that most people believe that Jürgen Steinmetz really is Jewish, only he doesn't know it. So we're hoping eventually he's going to take a DNA test and discover he really is. But in the meantime, we'll let him get away with that. But actually, the Jewish year does not mark the beginning of the Jewish people. It's a symbolic number, not a real number, that marks the beginning of the universe of time. And it just came, it's an artificial number. But what it really is trying to say is that time belongs to everybody. The Christian year 2021 it only really touches Christians. The Muslim year refers to the time that Muhammad went from Mecca to Medina. Um, the, and that, of course, therefore, that's particular to the Islamic world. The Jewish year has nothing, it just says the world belongs to everyone, time. And so it's just a number that indicates it. In reality, the Jewish people are not 6,000 years old. We're probably closer to only 4,000 years old. But you know what? Even 4,000 is a long time. So that's why we have lots of holidays, because we've been around a long time.
Well, I guess you deserve it. Anyone,
Anyway, I want to wish you a happy new year. And the tradition is, and everybody tomorrow night should have an apple and honey, because that indicates you're going to have a sweet new year. So have a piece of apple and put some honey on it. And even if you're not Jewish, you still need a sweet year.
that sounds really delicious. All right, Peter.
Bye-bye.
Bye, and
Take
we'll
care.
talk to you soon.
Good
Bye-bye.
evening and happy new year. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.